What if they were renting? I don't think most of the 700,000 Palestinians who got kicked out in 48. I don't.
Yeah, they didn't even own that land. A lot of the issue of the transfer during 48. Or sorry, even prior to 48, really, was the Palestinians there. A lot of them didn't own the land that they were working on. The land was owned by like rich landowners in Turkey, so Jewish people would buy the land from the rich landowners and then show up at these people's farms and be like, "Hey, we own this land now, and also we only want to employ Jewish people."
You understand how you can have like a consequentialist framework, but still live in a world where there are rules that shouldn't be broken because the breaking of those rules and the non-enforcement of those rules would lead long term to worse outcomes.
Yeah, I understand. But what if it led to positive outcomes? You wouldn't oppose it, right?
Oh my God, this dude literally can't listen. I understand that, but what if I just repeat the same thing that showcases I don't actually understand a word of what you just said?
Well,
I really appreciate how we immediately, how within 13 minutes we went from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to, is it okay to rape children?
Yep.
So I'm a tankie.
Okay.
And I morally take an issue with the positions that you're taking in regards to the Palestinian issue.
If you're a tankie, I can see why, but do you want to elaborate?
Sure. So do you believe in a one-state solution or do you believe in a two-state solution?
It's hard to say because it seems like both groups don't agree on either of them. I think two-state makes more sense, easily.
No, morally.
What?
Morally.
Oh, well, I mean, as a Western multiculturalist, I'd love the idea of both of them living as a binational state with equal rights for Arabs and Jews, but I don't think it's happening anytime soon. I don't think either of them want it either, so...
Well, yeah, that wouldn't. So what they want is irrelevant in regards to the moral.
Oh, I like this guy.
Kind of. No, what they want does matter.
I like Lonerbox.
Kind of, because I can't impose my morals on them, right? I think one-state solution, like if that was imposed on them from the top down, you would get a civil war, like immediately. I don't know. Two states makes more sense to me.
Yeah, but getting a civil war would be relevant to the moral position, right? So you would say, well, I think morally supporting this position is the correct one, independent of whether a civil war happens or not, right? So Crimea should return back to Ukraine, right? Even if it was independent of everything else, right?
Yeah.
Right. So,
but the difference is that
the situation doesn't matter, right?
The difference is that Crimea was unilaterally invaded and annexed by Russia. Okay, and the way to solve that moral issue is for them to just
reminds me of a foreign destiny.
When it comes to Israel-Palestine, I don't think, as far as moral claims to the land, you can say both sides have their moral claims to the land or whatever, because the Israelis are not going anywhere. Let's face it, Palestinians are not going anywhere. But if it's in the interest of both groups to just Palestinians get this part, Israelis get this part, I don't see what would be immoral about that compared to the Crimea thing.
Well, the morality part of it would be that one side got completely kicked out of their homes, right? So we would say that it's ethically a very moral position for those people to be able to return, and some other homes built for these.
Well, you could have that. You could have that. Well,
having a one country where people can freely move.
So as far as the right to return to their homes or their homelands, typically in international law with refugees, it seems to be that people return to their homelands, like their home country. But like the West Bank and Gaza is Palestine. Those people were kicked out of Palestine. So you could have two states and people could go to the West Bank or Gaza and they could live there. Yeah. Or they could get naturalized because that's a human right as well. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the descriptions that you just made, but they're irrelevant to the ethical part. So even if international law didn't exist, right, that doesn't mean that those people shouldn't be able to return back to their stolen homes, right?
When you say stolen homes, you understand that when we talk about homes, the homes were destroyed. They're not there anymore. Okay, we're talking about homeland. Like refugees don't typically, I don't think it's very normal for a refugee to reappear 50, 75 years later, or their grandchildren to reappear and then just put the key in the lock of the old house and get it back, right? It's not usually what happens. Normally, even if they go back to their home country, they go into, like, they get resettled into a new place. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either, like, morally or practically.
Why should it be that? So, for example, let's see, why do you not think that the Israeli should be reality?
Why do I not think what, sorry?
Why should it be, for example, the people who are the victims? Why do you think, right, that an Israeli shouldn't be evicted from the home and moved into a newer home and the Palestinians be able to return to their area? Why should it be that the Palestinians have to reallocate, even though the qualifier in addition here would be that the Palestinians were the victims of
that? Because I don't think people have an innate right to a particular piece of land, especially if we're talking about, like, essentially a right that would be...
Got a transfer isn't going to show up in GDP, but the resulting increase in consumption will. Yeah, exactly.
Based on, like, Ottoman documents from...
But conservatives won't accept
decades
that.
Or like 100 years ago, potentially. I think when you have, unfortunately, fact of human society is that when we have wars and people get displaced, I think the idea of trying to restore people to some particular arbitrary point in time where people lived somewhere doesn't make any sense. I think trying to achieve it will only result in fighting and bloodshed. I don't think it makes anyone particularly happy. And there's a good reason we don't do it. Like the Greeks who got kicked out of northern Cyprus to go and had to go south. Like, yeah, they're probably not going to get their homes back, but like...
But if the fucking tankie is just going to say, well, regardless of any ensuing violence, don't you think ethically, I was 16 minutes behind in your stream, but my YouTube crash had to force me to restart. I just got to the end of the middle ground where I ticked out a beta
they've got
Set
other
down
homes
the
now.
final
The Pakistanis who had to leave, the Muslims who had to leave
Okay.
Pakistan don't get their homes back, but they have citizenship. They can live somewhere, and then their future generation just gets to live as normal people. Seems like a better way to do it than trying to restore everyone to one particular point.
Okay, but that doesn't answer the question because it's just a statement of
Oh
facts,
my God, I
right?
told you.
So when
Yep.
we're talking about a moral in this case, right, you're saying that morally, like for example, Crimea would be Russian because it's 8 years now that those people have taken the area over. So would you say that morally, if Crimea would be Russian now, and we should condemn Ukrainians for saying that? I don't think so, right?
No, but the thing is with Crimea, we're talking about place. First of all, that was much more recent than Palestine, and we're not talking about. You're conflating an annexed territory.
That's weird because that's something no right-wing economist would agree with. Haha. It's just because the Democrats did it. Like I don't know.
With a recognized country, and we're comparing refugees returning to the.
And people don't. I hate so much when people like people think it's like such a gotcha to like say things like, oh, don't you know unemployment doesn't include people who stopped looking for work. Like it's first of all, any decent, like they teach that in economics classes. Like yes, everyone knows that. Yes, any good economist knows that. Two, we have different measures of unemployment, and they tell us different things. So we have U6 unemployment, and U6 unemployment does include discouraged workers. Like we have different measures of this that tell us different things. Yes, that are used in different contexts. So usually, I think we'd use like U2 unemployment, which is the thing they're referring to, or is it U2 or U3 is the one that's used most commonly, like the one the Fed looks at or whatever. But yeah, U6 unemployment does include discouraged workers. And then we can also just look at the prime age employment population and like, oh, who knows? That's crazy. It's like at 80.7%, like a 40-year like historic high, like wild, crazy.
Their homes versus their homelands. For example, you talk about Crimea. The Crimean Tatars who were deported by Stalin got to go back to Crimea. I don't think the best answer for them necessarily was for them to try and find exactly which house they were kicked out of or which acre of land they were kicked out of and just getting to seize that part back. I don't think that makes sense either. Because you're talking about morals, right? Part of morality, I don't know if you believe this is a tankie, but part of morality also comes from outcomes, okay? So if something causes like a lot of harm, like hundreds of thousands of Crimean Tatars returning.
There we go. Finally, this is what he should have said initially.
In the 90s, they're going to seize back every single school.
We're trying to maximize utility, and it's probably not going to maximize utility to do what this tankie is suggesting.
Square foot of land that they had. That might not necessarily make anyone better off. That would result in a shitload of fighting and bloodshed when you could just like build new houses, okay? And then everyone has it easier. Or do you believe?
What does tankie mean, Fawn? I think the original usage of the term is basically, to me, it means like a communist who supports I think it was Stalin. I think it was the Soviet Union invading like Austria and having tanks tanks in the street there. It basically just means authoritarian communist Stalin supporting guy. I think it was in Austria. Those who express support for one star. Okay, no, where's the
Believe that anyone who's ever been kicked out of their
the new houses.
Do you believe that
members of the Communist Party group who follow the party line, specifically distinguished party members who spoke out in defense of the Soviet use of tanks to suppress the Hungarian revolt or the 1968 Prague Spring? Okay,
anyone who's ever been kicked out of their house has an innate right back to that house or back to that acre of land, like the fig tree or whatever?
If you're talking about it in an idealist case, sure. But the thing is that our moral decisions are sort of on a practicality as well, right? So, for example,
That's what I
if
just
we're
said.
going to say, for example, the Tatars, I think they should be able to return to their houses, right? But, right, I think that you can create new houses for the people who have already settled on that. So I don't think that you should create new houses for the people who have been the victims, like, for example, Palestinians, but you should create the houses for the Israelis.
Okay, so they should move the Israelis out of the houses and then put the Palestinians back. Okay, I got you. Yeah, okay. I know
So
what
we
you're saying.
ethnically
Okay.
cleanse
So
the
basically,
Israelis is
your
what
position
you're
is
saying.
the Palestinians they have a moral right to each like area of land that they were kicked out of, right? To each like acre of land. Can you answer that just yes or no, please?
Yeah, and you can then build land for other.
Okay. Do they pass that right on to their kids? Say if they die a refugee, do they pass the right on to their offspring?
Sure.
Do they pass the grandkids?
Sure.
Great grandkids? And does this ever end?
If you don't get their houses back, no.
Okay. So when Jews claim that they are when Jews claim that they're returning to the when Jews claim that they're returning to the hills of Judea and Samaria, if they were able to actually point their DNA back to a particular square or an acre of land in Judea and Samaria,
basically Golden
regardless of
Snakey,
who's living there,
that's what
they
it
should be allowed to go and grab
means.
it?
Well, it depends on what you mean by someone who's Jew. I don't think it's only genetical. I think it's also cultural. I don't think that the Jews living in the United States have any connection to the people that lived there 1,000 years ago.
You don't think Jewish people
But if I
in
may,
Europe have connections to Israel,
Let me-
to the land? I'm going to clarify the question, okay? Because I don't think you
Because
understood
it's not
it.
only genetic.
I'm going to clarify the question. If a Jewish person is able to prove genetically or whatever the fuck else that, or even just a land document, if a Jewish person was able to prove that they came from a particular place that is now currently, I don't know, Nablus or Ramallah, should they be allowed to seize that land back? Since right of return is apparently you can inherit it forever, or does it stop somewhere?
Well, I think that this Jewish person is it. I don't believe in genetics. I believe in the cultural one. But if it's culturally the case, yeah, sure. I think the person that's living there should be given another home closer to that area.
It's made up
Okay.
by the
I feel like there are probably a lot of Palestinians who would be a bit upset with that argument, but okay. Do you know the people who do you know in the would you say this about the Middle East as well then? Because a lot of Jews lost a lot of property in the Middle East, Mizrahi Jews, in the 50s and late 40s. Should they be allowed to go and evict whoever lives on there and take their places back?
Evictions on principle. I just think that there should be other homes built for other people who are evicted.
So, like Ben Gvir, who is descended from Iraqi Jews, should be allowed to go to Iraq and evict whoever might be living on the house that his family had to leave.
Sure, because that was immoral, right? It was immoral.
Oh, awesome, great.
Had to leave there, right?
Yeah,
What a
but it's also
wonderful
immoral that
world
people
to
who live
live
there
in.
now have to get punished for a crime they didn't commit.
True.
Yeah, but it's not a
Thank you.
moralization against them, right?
Well, okay, you can say that, but they're losing their
Because
they're
evictions,
getting evicted. You can say it's not a moral claim against them, but they're getting evicted. They don't give a fuck. They're suffering for it. They're suffering for a crime they didn't commit.
What? There's many people. I think their suffering should go away by building another home, right? That's the point.
But why does I'm just wondering what quality there is in a human being that gives them an innate right to a particular piece of land? Is this like a sacred level of private property that would go back like
Ethical position. I mean,
what if they were renting? I don't think most of the 700,000 Palestinians who got kicked out in 48.
It has to do.
Yeah, they didn't even own that land. A lot of the issue with the transfer during 48, or sorry, even prior to 48, really, was the Palestinians there. A lot of them didn't own the land that they were working on. The land was owned by like rich landowners in Turkey, so Jewish people would buy the land from the rich landowners and then show up at these people's farms and be like, "Hey, we own this land now, and also we only want to employ Jewish people." So that was the whole that's half the issue there with the Hebrew labor.
I don't think most of the 700,000 Palestinians who got kicked out of their land in the Nakba were property owners, were they? I think most of them would have been tenants.
I don't know whether the property owners or not. It's the morality that matters.
You keep saying
We're
the
not making
morality. I'm
realistic
asking you.
arguments here, right?
I'm asking you morally. So why do they? Where's that moral right?
Right.
That moral right to the point that you get to actually hurt other people who didn't do any of the crimes that happened, and even if it's like the offspring of the person who the crime happened to, I'm wondering where this
Yeah,
morality
but,
comes from. That's a really strange moral standard to me. I don't understand that.
What do you mean? We're talking about an abstract subjective morality, obviously.
Yeah, but I'm asking you to
Are you a
explain that
moral
morality to
objectivist?
me. I'm asking you. I don't know if I'm a moral objectivist. I tend to base my morals on on outcomes. That's why I believe in like outcomes with I guess like long-term some rules. That's why the outcome of imposing your moral standards would be fucking
Do you
horrible.
think that
right?
fucking... Yeah, but we're also deontologists. For example, do you think
Well, I'm
that
not
raping a
deontologist.
child is on principle bad?
Yep.
Okay, so you think that raping a child is okay if it puts them in like positive outlook?
Yeah, it's still bad. That's still okay with consequentialism, though. Do you know what rule consequentialism, though? Do you know what that is? Because even in that
Consequentialism, right?
because even in that niche situation, okay. So you're saying that even if there was a case where you could abuse a child, but it would have good
I've gone far from
outcomes for
hot
them,
men.
you can still oppose it because you don't really want to live in a world
Oh, I'm sorry. You've been gone for. I was so
where
confused.
people are ever abusing children because almost always, pretty much always, as far as we know, it's always going to be bad. Just because there might be one or two exceptions, that doesn't mean you shouldn't wipe out as a rule because as a whole, it's a bad thing to do. The world would not be a nice place if people thought this was okay to do if they thought it could produce good outcomes for some people. That's why, consequentially, that rule can still apply, even in niche cases.
It would be a nice, yeah, what if it would? What if being a child would lead to a better world, right? You wouldn't oppose that, right? You still have to
If it would
follow
lead to a better
consequences.
world, not as a rule, no. The world is general. So usually the problem with raping children is that the children suffer for the rest of their lives. The problem with raping children and allowing people to do that is that the children suffer. So it doesn't lead to a better world.
I really appreciate how we immediately, how within 13 minutes we went from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to, is it okay to rape children? Awesome, dude.
Innately, unless you're redefining the entire concept of child abuse.
No, all you're saying is well, raping a child is bad because it leads to bad outcomes. And I'm saying that you would be fine with that if it has positive outcomes, right? In a hypothetical.
Okay, this is the argument that you're doing to me, okay?
I don't.
You're basically saying that if good
Why are we doing like literally like 2019 Vaush tier ethical debates right now?
outcomes are all that matters. Why can't a doctor murder one healthy patient and harvest 5 of their organs to save 5 people who would otherwise die, right? Why can't they do that? Because the outcome is you save 5 people and you kill 1, right? But then I would say that that's still not acceptable because if a doctor did that, if it was normal for doctors to do that, in the long term, no one's going to ever trust doctors. No one would ever go to the hospital and then more people would die. Do you understand how you can have like a consequenceless framework but still live in a world where there are rules that shouldn't be broken because the breaking of those rules and the non-enforcement of those rules would lead long term to worse outcomes?
Yeah, I understand But what if it led to positive outcomes? You wouldn't oppose it, right? In the
Oh
hypothetical
my
scenario.
God, this dude literally can't listen. I understand that, but what if I just repeat the same thing that showcases I don't actually understand a word or what you just said?
Well, then we would live in a different world. Like, how does that work? So so with sticking in the real world, can you just map that out for me? How would that work? How would it work where, are we talking like magic? Like, if you abuse a child, then like aliens come down and then 99% of all the other children in the world will have happy lives for the rest of eternity? Like, and we'll eliminate bone cancer and we'll eliminate all the other child abuse in the future? Like,
Hold on. What I'm talking about is a hypothetical within your moral framework. Okay? So I'm saying that if you, right, on principle, have no objection to something happening, an action, is an action inherently in of itself wrong? No, right? Because you're a consequentialist, right?
Yeah.
Right. So a raping of a child cannot be wrong in of itself. The action cannot be wrong in of itself, right?
You can assume that, but the problem is that that doesn't exist, right? Like, it always has consequences if you're a child. Like,
So the child doesn't exist.
have you been like waiting to use this
I
trick
didn't
that
get
you
the
learned
last
on? I'm saying that you're saying in and of itself, if you disregard the consequences, like, okay, you can say that, but we don't live in a world where acts don't have consequences. Actions have consequences. So yeah, if you could like, how does that even work? Like, if you punch someone in the face, but they don't feel it, they don't know it happened, it doesn't hurt them, it doesn't leave any mark, then yeah, you could probably do it because like there's no consequences. But that's not the world we live in. So why would you apply that? Did you just like learn a?
Test
Did you
your
just learn
moral
like?
positions.
Yeah, I know, because you discovered.
I'm good. Why?
For
How are
deontology
they
like 5
still
minutes ago,
stuck on
and I
this?
tried to prove it by using retarded fucking child analogies. And I thought we were talking about right return. What the fuck, man?
You brought it up.
You kept saying
You
moral.
brought it up.
You kept saying it's moral.
You just said where morality comes from.
Yeah, because you kept on saying, oh, it's moral. Well, I'm saying, why do you think it's moral? Where did you invent this rule that if a tenant gets kicked out of their house, then they get to pass their right to those that acre of land down for eternity, and they can go and evict whoever lives there 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000 years later, and that's apparently fine. But the person who lives there, I guess, because they got punished for a crime they didn't commit, they just build a new house for them. And this is the normal world to live in. Yeah, I'm going to ask you about your morals, because your morals make no fucking sense. And you don't apply these morals to anyone, I guarantee. And I guarantee you don't apply these morals in any other situation apart from for Palestinians. Like, for right, you've never made this argument for Pakistanis, or for Hindus, or for Greeks, or for Turks, or for like people in the Balkans, or for
So
Germans.
many
You've never made this argument for any
Palestinians'
other group. I
rights
know
who
you
never lapsed, who get to keep their refugee status 5 generations down.
We all know you haven't.
Yep.
Everyone knows you haven't. You know you haven't. You know that I know you haven't.
Well, okay, it's fine that I haven't made any arguments in regards to that, but I think that should happen, right?
Yeah, you think everyone should find out the first bit of land that their ancestors lived on where someone got kicked out. So if I want, I should be allowed to go all the way back down my family tree. I should be able to go all the way back down my family tree and find out, okay, at some point someone got kicked out of the house, because, you know, human beings, unfortunately. And I just get to go to that bit of land and say, mate, 12 BC, sorry, get out of my land. And some arbitrary power can build a house for you somewhere else. I can do that. I reclaim Phoenicia for the Maronites.
Well, there is a morally, I would support that, sure. But I think
why? Why do you want to live in that world? That's fucking stupid.
But the opposite of that moral position is to say that Crimea belongs to Russian based on might makes right.
No one said might makes right. No, it's not about might makes right. Might doesn't make right. Might may have to.
Russia, yes.
Not yet, because it's not solidified as part of Russia. I mean, it probably will. Let's face it. But if there's a chance to get it back, why the fuck not? What?
Morally, does it yes or no?
Depends on the circumstances.
Oh my God.
Like,
oh
yeah,
man.
Is Crimea Russian morally?
Morally, Ukraine should be allowed to take Crimea back. Yeah.
Yes or no?
I just said yes. Why do you keep saying yes or
It's been
no?
8 years since Russia has that land.
Why do you keep saying 8 years?
It's probably.
It's been 10 years. Did you listen to a debate that I had? Did you listen to a debate that I had 2 years ago when Crimea was 8 years, and you just came in programmed to say 8 years and didn't think that 2 years have passed, that we are 2 years hence? I remember this happened in a debate like 2 years ago. That's where you got that from, right?
Yeah, I saw your debate with Battlefield.
So you're an yeah.
Asking these questions.
Oh man, way to fucking. I'm so glad Lonerbox was able to immediately recognize that and call that out. Oh, holy based.
It's important.
Yeah, I think Palestinians would have a much stronger right to go and try and reclaim their homes 5 years after 48, but we're 75 years thence now. Israel is a country. Crimea is not recognized as part of Russia. The rest of the world is still given a bit of a fucking ambiguity around Crimea.
What if it was recognized as part of Russia? Is it then part of Russia?
At this rate, it probably has to be,
I
because
mean,
there's probably no chance.
that's kind of how countries work. That is kind of how borders and countries work. I mean,
Ukraine never taking
like,
it back, is there? It's quite unlikely, isn't it?
Morally, why?
Morally, probably because the results of why are you
they've run through the
Answer
outcome
question.
things.
Morally, probably
100
because
million
the outcomes
times.
of trying to achieve a reclamation of Crimea would result in a lot more harm than letting it go, unfortunately. That's a really sad fact. It sets a pretty dangerous precedent. But what are you going to do? Is Ukraine going to invade Crimea? Crimea's a fucking fortress. Like, how many people would die for that? Would Ukraine even be willing to do that at that point? They haven't even fixed the Donbass or Zaporizhia and Kherson yet. So I don't know. I think Crimea's probably gone, unfortunately. It's a sad fact of reality.
We're talking.
Huh?
Yeah, but we don't get our morals from what is actionable or not, right?
All right, they're gonna run in circles for for so long. Okay, I'm no longer interested in that.